Yeah. We can replace them. That's not a problem. Okay, you all, glad that you're here. Evangelism is something that conjures up all kinds of weird images in church people. If it does weird images in church people, you can imagine what it does when people think about who are not church people. And the image of an evangelist is not very popular in America today, is it? Unfortunately. But maybe evangelists or us church people, maybe we, in fact, earn some of the reputations that we have among the unchurched. I've got a lot of stuff. It's 10 or 12 pages there in front of you there, and I've got more to give to you. So this is going to be a warp speed, but I'm hoping to just awaken something inside of you to think about, and when you think about reaching people who are far from God. My conviction is my concern as well, is that most all churches are inwardly focused. Inwardly focused. And for all practical purposes, we think, the lost people can just go to hell because the church is about us. Right? I mean, that's sad to say that, blunt to say that, but there's truth in that. There's 4 books that I've actually going to highlight for you. 4 books. 3 of them are on the list. 1 is not. The one that is not, I'll give to you because it's not on your. It's called The Externally Focused Quest, and it's a great book. Get people thinking about others instead of themselves as Christians and the followers of Christ. The Externally Focused Quest. The other books are listed there. The Rise of the Nuns is I like to read. I read a lot. I told a church member the other day in my office, I said, please don't be offended by what I'm going to tell you, but I told him I loved him and loved his wife and loved the church, but I spend more time, more thought processes, more energy, more reading, more discovering, more praying. I've got people that I don't know on my mind far more than I have people that I do know that I pastor on my mind. And I said, please don't be offended by that. Oh, he said he wasn't, but I don't know if that's the truth or not. But The Rise of the Nuns is a book I've finished just recently, N-O-N-E-S, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to buzz through this stuff, but I want to give you these things because if you're really interested in this, or if it's like when I was in college, there were certain classes I took just because I had to take them just to fulfill a requirement. I was completely uninterested in it. I was only interested enough to pass or get a decent grade, then I just were done. So if you're thinking about evangelism and you're here right now because there's nowhere else to be and you're just trying to pass, which I don't think that's the case because there's, what's the other option? So I think you must have a desire for this. But the nuns are the second largest religious group in America. Yeah. Yes, 3rd page. The first 2 pages, I'll get to that in just a second. But The Rise of the Nuns, second largest religious group in America now. Catholics are the first largest religious group in America. For a long time, the Baptists were the second largest group in America, religious group in America. Now they've been supplanted by this group called the nuns. 1 out of every 5 Americans in the United States, in our country, check on a survey. What religion are you? None. 1 out of every 5. All right? And then 2 other books, Irresistible Evangelism, which is another very outstanding book. And then Steve Sjogren wrote this. He was one of the co-authors of this book. And then another one called Conspiracy of Kindness. They're all about, these are about servant evangelism or kindness evangelism, those things. The first 2 pages of the handout, I just bring those to you because I've taught LACE before and evangelism before, and some of the stuff that I did. Just want to throw out a few. Some people just have to have, some real definite, concrete things in front of them. I'll give you some scriptures there. The lost and found chapter, we know that. Lost coin, lost sheep, the lost son in Luke 15. Bill Hybels is famous for the line, lost people matter to God. All right? Of course, the prayer about the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. 2 Peter tells us that God is not slow in keeping his promises, but it shows us the heart of God. He's holding off. We just say, come, Lord Jesus, don't we? Come clean up the mess. Come take us home, all those kind of things. But why is he not doing that? Because a lot of people would be condemned to go to hell because they're lost. Do we still even believe that or not? I mean, that kind of gets down to the very basic, what do we really believe? Are we all just kind of universalists at heart? We go to, and I do funerals all the time for people. I don't know anything about, I don't really know some of them about where they are with Christ, but I'm going to just honor the family and try to lift them up and encourage them. So God is not slow, but he's waiting for people to have more opportunity to come to know him in saving faith. Our Wesleyan heritage, there's a lot of voices in our denomination that are trying to call us back to kind of our roots. Nothing to do but save souls. That's the charge Wesley gave to the early preachers. There's a funny story. That I learned back in the year 1800, in the turn of the 19th century in the United States, 1 out of every 3 people in the United States was a Methodist. 1 out of every 3 was a Methodist in 1800. And there was a saying that was real common on out in the plains region of the country, when it was just cold and blowing, the wind chills just cutting you like a knife, and temperatures are just horrific, and maybe snowstorms and whatnot. There was a saying, people look out and say, my goodness, we know there's only 2 things that are outside today, the crows and the Methodist preachers. Crows and the Methodists. So this is who we are. I mean, this is what has fueled the fire in the Methodist Church for a long time, into the last probably 50 or 75 years. It is, I've been saved by the grace of God, and it behooves me to want to pay it forward and share that with other people, this great joy of what Christ has done for me. I once was blind, but now I see. But instead, we form a committee and a commission and study things like that. Some famous quotes. Preach the gospel. I have this little plaque in my office someone gave to me, St. Francis of Assisi, about 800 years ago or so, 700-800 years ago. Preach the gospel always, if necessary, use words. And it is indeed necessary. But we're talking about being the message and then sharing it. You've heard about show and tell. Remember that as a kid? Now we're talking about show, then tell. We'll come to that because that's in your handout. Now here's one that I like to share. The very first Sunday that I was here, a pastor at this church, I shared this quote. I said, the church is the only organization that exists solely for the sake of its non-members. William Temple. See how many people agree with that one. Really agree with that one. Truly, honestly agree with that one. First image I showed them on the screen, I had an image of a cruise ship and an image of a battleship. I said, which are we? What do you want to be? Cruise ship where you get catered to? And I've been on cruises, I love them. I don't live on a cruise ship. It's good to get away once in a while. Or are we a battleship? So, and then Charles Finney's quote, Francis Thompson, no kin to me. Maybe you know that. It's a long poem, old poem, a long time ago, The Hound of Heaven. God is the Hound of Heaven. And so then the second sheet talks about various styles of sharing our faith, etc. The story of the woman at the well, John chapter 4, there, the 3 circles, sometimes a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you learn some of these techniques, you can be at a restaurant with someone, a friend from work, a friend that you're there, or at the break room, or a neighbor, or just some kind of a spontaneous, extemporaneous, God-given God moment, and someone just starts telling you and sharing stuff with you, and they just seem hopeless, and they seem just so distraught and so confused. There's some things you can do to show them some diagrams about, as you begin to delve into spiritual matters and talk to things that you can do to help them see what we're talking about. That's just some stuff there. That's just, I didn't want to get into much of that too deeply. Now, the next page is really kind of begins the meat of it, and it gives you those source books that I've just talked about, some scriptures there. Jesus' great proclamation about the gates of hell. You know, we are the church, you all. We got to reclaim that. Later on in the notes, if I can get to it, but it talks about, you know, I was in a parachurch group for a while. I was in college. The Lord used Campus Crusade for Christ in my life in a huge way to bring me back to Him. And thank God for that. Thank God for Campus Crusade. Thank God for the Navigators. Thank God for other parachurch organizations, mission organizations. But God's favor and God's plan is on the church, and the parachurch organizations are to support. We got a group of people in our church that are Young Life is starting to try to form in Woodford County. Young Life is a ministry to high school kids, and so they've got a large Young Life ministry in Lexington. They're bringing it over here to Woodford County, and so I'm all in favor of that. But the parachurches are, you know, that's not the hope of the world. The hope of the world is us. There's no plan B, you know that. We are the church, you know, and so we need to reclaim that. And then the Great Commission. Again, in the message, somebody, I think Julie Hager talked about that. Julie did a few minutes ago about the message, how she likes it. I do too. So part one, the nuns. Who are they and where did they come from? They are the religiously unaffiliated. They are 20% of all Americans. They are second only to the Catholics as the largest religious group in the United States. And who are they? Just give you a little bit of demographics here. Again, it's not, these are just trends, all right? They tend to be more male than female. They tend to be younger rather than older. The older a person is, the more likely they have a religious affiliation. It's no surprise, is it? No surprise. No surprise. I mean, I've got kind of a battle in this church because every time I want to say do something for the young adults or the youth or the children, what about us over here? You can go out and do a senior ministry, but it's going to be more inward ministry. Nothing against it. My gosh, I'm 55 years old in a week. I'll be in that AARP range here. I'm getting into that right now, you know. So I'm not the young guy anymore either. But the fact of the matter is the older the person is, the more likely that they're already either religiously affiliated or may already be a Christian. That's just a fact. That's just what the research shows. More white than other colors, other races rather. Not necessarily an atheist. These nuns are not atheists necessarily. It's just that they're not very religious. They tend to be in favor of things like abortion and same-gender marriage being legal. They tend to be liberal or more moderate. They tend to not necessarily be hostile towards religious institutions. The nuns aren't against us, you all. This group, this 20%, they're not against us. They just don't care about us. You know, they're just not paying attention to us. Go have your church. Great. Go do what you want to do. Wonderful. We got our lives to live. You know, they're not trying to shut us down. You know, they're not trying to kick us out of town. They're not trying to get our church doors closed. They're not the ones trying to get prayer out of schools or prayer back in the school. Whatever. Religion and spiritual matters just really aren't even showing up on their radar too much. Initially, anyhow. Spiritual but not religious. There's been a shift from I believe to maybe to who knows. See, the reason that it's important for us to even talk like this and read books like The Nuns, The Rise of the Nuns, is the older that we are, the longer that we've been in church, the more likely we don't have any non-Christian friends anymore. If you think about it, most of the people, if you've been in church a good while, maybe somebody here is a brand new believer and God just saved you out of this nasty old world recently. But if that's not the case, chances are you don't really have many friends that are unchurched and non-Christian. Oh, there's people probably that you like to see go. But you could ask a lot of elderly people, me in my age and up, you don't have many unchurched friends, don't have many friends that we have that are friends, that aren't in church or go to church some or have a religious affiliation. But then you can ask another question. How many of y'all have kids or grandkids who are completely unchurched, who are completely de-churched? They haven't darkened the church doors. You've begged them, you've prayed them. That's what I'm talking about here, see? And so it behooves us then to know what people that don't go to church that we're trying to reach, behooves us to know something about them. Who are they? What do they prefer? What do they like? What's their experiences, etc. So there's three groupings of religiously unaffiliated people: those who were raised totally outside of organized religion, those who became unhappy with their religion and left, and those who never really engaged with religion in the first place, even though they were perhaps raised in a religious household. You see, seeker services were real big. Bill Hybels made the seeker service huge. And there are still some baby boomers that are in that seeker kind of mentality. But the Gen Xers, the baby boomer generation ended about 1964, right? 1964, 65. So I was born in 1959, so I'm on the tail end of the great baby boomer generation. And the generations that come after me, Gen X and Gen Y and all these other things, some of those are not even seekers anymore. They're not thinking about religion and rejecting it. They're just not thinking about it at all. They're not rejecting anything. They're not even thinking about it at all. It sounds preposterous to us, doesn't it? It sounds improbable to us. It may even sound unbelievable to you, because most of the people that you know and are acquaintances with are not in that category, except maybe your own kids or grandkids. So why are the nuns in? And don't hesitate to ask a question, to jump in there, to raise an objection or anything like that. If there's something ambiguous, right, we can have enough trust that we can talk about these things. Why are the nuns and others similar to them increasing in numbers? Well, in the book, The Rise of the Nuns, he gives kind of three main reasons: politics, fights, and money. A lot of people in this culture today, and the nuns or the unchurched, religiously unaffiliated, believe that there's too much, the church is way too much political. Whether it's the Christian right, Christian left, the moral majority, it doesn't matter. The nuns are just weary of it all. Just weary of it all. They just are. Just are. Fights. In the minds of many, modern day Christianity no longer seems Christian. The church is hyper-political, out of touch, pushy, and arrogant. It's homophobic, hypercritical, and judgmental. Now, we don't think of ourselves that way, do we? But they do. They do. That's why of course, in this book, the externally focused Quest, they say the only thing harder than attracting people into the church is getting the church people attracted to go out into the world. The only thing harder than getting people to come to the church. See, most churches have been attractional. We've done everything but short of standing on our heads to try to get people to come to church, right? All kinds of things. Programs, bring a friend day. We have a certain amount of attendance. The pastor will, let's put a pie in his face or shave his head bald or get a mohawk or spend the night on top of a billboard. So, whatever. I've been into all that kind of stuff too. There's nothing really wrong at all with being attractional. We still got to be attractional. But we've not been very missional. Again, we've been internally focused. We're going to come to that. So another reason then is money. People are just suspicious. PTO stands for pass the loot. 20 years ago, the culture seemed to be saying, just 20 years ago, you all, God yes, church no. Now research shows a deepening crisis because it points to the culture that now says God perhaps, Christianity and Christians, nah, not so much. Not so much. We live in a post-Christian world, right? I ask you a provocative question. Is the United States of America a Christian nation? It is not. By practice, it is not. We were founded upon, we know our founding fathers, we know that. We learned all that stuff in school. Don't know if they still do or not, but we did. Sean, maybe not so much, he's a young guy. But, It's a different world. It's a different world. And we've become so scared of the world. We've become so paranoid of it. We've circled the wagons and said, keep out. Keep out. Keep out. Well, we got to change that, right? And there are some churches that are, in fact, changing that and doing things differently. All right? Let's talk about the belief system, then, of the nuns. Truthiness. I don't know if it's a word or not. There's a lot of truth out there. There isn't just one truth out there. There are multiple truths. Facts don't really matter to the nuns. What matters is how you feel about it. Is it true or not really isn't the issue. See, we'll debate till the cows come home that we are a Christian nation. We're founded on Christian principles. And we'll want to hang 10 commandments on every school and every church door and every place we can. Any place and every place we can stick a 10. It's irrelevant to them. Do you get that? It's irrelevant to them. So why do we keep trying to force them to take something they don't want? See? This is not easy for any of us to hear. It's not easy for me to read that book. It's not easy for me to try to figure out and learn what people who are not going to church at all are thinking. Because, if you know someone that's in that category, if they are a family member, someone, they're probably not going to argue with you in a mean kind of way. So you're not really going to really know what they're thinking probably and what their worldviews are deep down inside. But truth doesn't really matter. It's all about what's it feel like. We'll talk about cause in just a minute because I've mentioned one or two of those already. Wikiality. It's funny that she put up about Wikipedia. If it was a book, it'd be 2.1 million pages. But Wikipedia is sometimes really wrong. Anybody here not know what Wikipedia is? Anybody not know Wikipedia? Good. That's a good sign. But it's oftentimes been found in error because it's not so much about truth. It's about majority opinion. See, online encyclopedia is written entirely by unpaid volunteers. Why do you get to access that free? Because they sell ads on the internet. You know that how they make their money. Now it pops up every once in a while. They want you to make a donation to Wikipedia, but they're unpaid volunteers, and sometimes they share. They have errors and fabrications, but to the nun, again, it doesn't matter. Reality is determined by majority vote. For example, if enough people say 2 + 2 = 5, then guess what? 2 + 2 = 5. How many of you all would like to, or would be tempted to forsake all the stuff about don't argue with people and don't, and then you get into it because you know that 2 + 2 does not equal 5. And it doesn't matter how many millions of people might try to tell you otherwise. By golly, it equals 4. It's always equal 4, still equals 4, and it's always going to equal 4. Right? So if you find yourself sucked into things like that, you've missed the point. You can win the battle and lose the war, right? And that's what we do as Christians sometimes. That's why the world sees us as argumentative, and all that. Find out what really matters then. Mistakers. That's another value system. Once you get rid of true and false, then you tend to get rid of right and wrong. We're not sinners anymore. We're just mistakers. Morality has become a personal choice. It's personal, private, subjective, and a matter of personal decision or opinion. That's what they think, by and large. So here's a question for you. The nuns actually do believe in something. It's just not the truth. They believe in themselves. As church leaders and active members in the church, we have an obligation to show people the truth of Jesus. Show them more than tell them. This will not always be easy. In many ways, the gospel runs counter to their thinking. And you have been sent to do just that. Are you prepared to do the work to bring the gospel to these lost sheep? Are you doing the research and prayer necessary? Then I just have a thought. You can ponder this, throw this away when you leave, whatever you want to do. But you maybe ponder some thoughts on there about that question. Maybe answer some, put some answers down on that. Are we willing to do the, Terry Taylor's been talking to us about prayer, right? What's the least attended, organized meeting that's on your church's website, that's in your church's bulletin, been there forever? What's the least attended, regularly scheduled, organized meeting in the church? Prayer meeting. What? Do your own survey. Just call churches in your neighborhood, call churches in your town, or call churches around Kentucky or whatever. And just find out how many still have a prayer meeting. Oh, people tell me, they're praying. Tim, they're praying in their homes. They're praying in their Sunday school class and their life groups. Yeah, I go to those prayer meetings. I've been there. And 98% of them are inwardly focused. Or you have a prayer meeting that's an hour long. It's in the schedule, Wednesday night or Sunday, whenever it is. And it's an hour long, and there's 45 minutes worth of prayer sharing, which can be just theological, Christianized gossip. And then there's 15 minutes of praying. Hello? Am I saying anything right there? Been at this a long time. So when you pray, who does the most talking, you or God? Who does the most talking, you or God? Have you ever told your kids, shut up and listen? We don't like the word shut up too much. Kind of offensive. You think God ever says that to the church? Why don't you just listen? Just listen. So, and are we doing the work necessary in research? Do you read the newspaper? Do you read it trying to glean insight? Do you read it like John Wesley used to tell early Methodist preachers forever ago, get your Bible out and put the newspaper beside it and read both. And figure out how one can help the other. Because they can. But if we compartmentalize things, that's what Christian people mostly do, we compartmentalize. We have our church life, and then we have our other life. It doesn't mean they're out doing drugs or crazy things. It's just they forget about the church. They forget about their worldview. And as soon as they walk out the church's doors, like Terry said, we'll sing 3 songs this week. And then 7 days later, we'll sing them again, Our worship life is compartmentalized. Our prayer life is compartmentalized. Our Bible studies are compartmentalized. But it's about worldview, which is important. All right. Any questions about that? What are you thinking? Are you thinking this guy's nuts? Meaning me? Am I harsh? Yes, sir. Right. Hang on to part 3 or 4 because we're going to come to that. We're going to come to that. We sure are. Anybody else? All right, let's look at part 2. It's a changing missional context. We talk about the change in the missional context of Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 17. In Acts chapter 2, like the first, 10 or 12 chapters of Acts is about Peter. And then the rest of the book of Acts is about Paul, primarily. So Peter's in Jerusalem, it's Pentecost. And he just simply said, repent and believe. He talked to him and he said, you all know the prophets. You know the writers. You know Peter, Paul, you know Abraham, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said, you know all that. So he was talking to a group of people that by and large already talked and talked the same language, thought the same kind of things. The context was very similar, Acts chapter 2. So he could just come right out, like we used to be able to say in the 60s or 70s in America, turn or burn, be filled or be grilled, get right or get left, and people knew what we were talking about. A lot of people did. Majority of people did. We were talking religion at least, right? Now you say that to someone, they look at you like, what are you smoking? Kind of a thing. So that's the context of Peter. Peter's talking to a group of people that were already religiously disposed. And he took them and then he offered them Christ. Repent and believe. Acts 17, very different world. Very different context. Acts 17 is far more like our context that we have in America today. You know, countries are actually sending missionaries from their countries to here, to America. That's preposterous, isn't it? But it happens. Paul said, you remember he's talking to, Mars Hill is where, the thinkers of the day were, the philosophers, the skeptics, the eggheads, the intellectuals, those who can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but they can solve, they're the Sheldons of the world. Anybody know who Sheldon is? Big Bang Theory? See, there's another thing, you all. If you want to really get in touch with culture and who the nuns are, watch some of the popular TV shows. Watch them. Because millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of the nuns are watching them. Go to some of these movies. Ooh, boy. Now I've just lost you there. I like to go to movies because I like to see what the world is seeing and dissect that and look into that. But Acts 17 is where all these thinking people were. And they had this one image there. It's an unknown God. It was dedicated to an unknown God. And Paul was like, what if I could tell you who that God is? Would you be interested? Wow. He didn't start out like Peter did. He didn't start out and say, you know Abraham. Abraham who? Yeah, he's the guy that lives across the street. You know Moses? Yeah, I know Moses. He's a good kid. You know Isaac and Jacob? They don't know those guys. This is in Mars Hill. This is in the Greek area. They don't know Abraham. They don't know Moses. They don't know Isaac and Jacob. They may have heard of them. Probably not. So the context of how we reach people today and how we do evangelism and how we share our faith and do our witness is so different today. And that's what I'm trying to talk about to you in all this. It says it used to be 130, now it's 108. That's the median worship of a typical congregation in the United States of America. More than 25% of all congregations have 50 or fewer in it. We think we're just the ones that are hurting in the Methodist Church. We'll hear those same dire statistics, won't we, Gene? It's across the country, you all. It's across the country. It's across the country. But we're not the only ones. How many of y'all know who John Calipari is? Anybody not know who John Calipari is? Okay? Well, where he coaches, University of Kentucky. He's been enormously successful since he's been here. I'm a graduate of UK. I was born and raised in Richmond. I'm a bluegrass boy all the way through. But you know how popular UK basketball is. Did you know, are you aware that in the last 4 years, the average attendance of Rupp Arena has declined? That is an absolute fact. Not by very much. But if it declines from 23,000 down to 22,900, that's big news, University of Kentucky. So attendance, what they're doing at the University of Kentucky football field, they're reducing their, and it's not because they haven't done very well. You go to high school, anybody go to high school football games anymore? What's the attendance like in high school football games? I came from a football town, Corbin. I was there for 13 years. And in the 13 years that I was there, I saw steadily, and they've had some very good football programs down there. They live and breathe. There's nothing to do in Corbin on Friday night in the fall. Nothing else to do. Oh, but there is. There is. People got wheels. They hop in their car, they drive to Lexington for a weekend. They hop in the car, they drive to Knoxville for a weekend. There's things to do. So attendance is down lots of places. So I say that just to kind of make us think that, sometimes misery loves company, so we're not the only ones that are struggling, but church attendance is significantly down all across the country. And then it says, the mega churches of 2,000 or more, they're only 0.5% of all the congregations in America. But let me tell you this, though. It's not on your sheet. But tomorrow Sunday, 50% of all the people in America that will be in church will be in a mega church. And there's so very few of them. Southland Christian Church in Lexington this weekend will have 10,000 people in church. I wonder if we did the aggregate average attendance of the 800 or so United Methodist churches in all of Kentucky Annual Conference. I bet it doesn't reach 10,000 on a Sunday. Around 15? All right. So then we could take Southland Christian and Quest in Lexington and combine them, and in two churches in one town, they're going to have more people in their churches than all the Methodist churches combined in the state of Kentucky, or at least in the Kentucky Annual Conference. So we all got our work to do, right? We got our work cut out for us. So the Great Commission has teeth, but we're not reaching people, so why? Why is this attendance? Why is it so low? Because we haven't really grasped the understanding of the missional context that we are in right now. We still want to think we're in Acts 2, but we're not. We're in Acts 17 now. There's two challenges that are listed there. Challenge 1, for mission to be pursued, existing Christians must die to themselves for the sake of the cause. I didn't correct that. I don't know where that came from. No longer can the mission be about us. It must be about those who have yet to darken our doorsteps. I worked our people over in this church strongly because the gift of Terry Taco being here this morning. And it ended up 33 people from our church were here. So I was really depressed early because I saw like 5. And I did everything but short setting on my head. But where are they? Even our own church, our own committed people. They got things to do, stuff going on in their lives. But there's sometime, somewhere, don't know when, I know how, it'll be through prayer, like Terry talks about. But it'll be this, I'm going to give up something. I'm going to give up some of my, me stuff. I'm going to give up something, and I'm going to get trained. We're going to die to ourselves and not make it about ourselves. Let me, I just thought about this. I did not get it in the notes. But I'm going to read. I don't like to read to you. My wife says, don't ever read to adults. But anyhow, I'm doing it. I'm going to read this. So we're talking about this. So again, listen to how we talk. It says this. Of course, I want to reach lost people. But I'm not going to let the music change. But I'm not going to lead a capital campaign to raise money. But I'm not going to park far away. I'm not going to risk stirring things up right now in the church. I'm not going to attend at a different service time. Of course I want to reach lost people, but I'm not going to start a new church. I'm not going to stand for the pastor dressing casually, but I'm not going to give money to launch a new site or relocate, but I'm not going to watch someone on a video, but I'm not going to put in 50 or 60-hour weeks, but I'm not going to let them start playing drums, but I'm not going to let them change how I preach, but I'm not going to give up my favorite seat, but I'm not going to turn things over to a bunch of 20-somethings, but I'm not going to attend on Saturday night, but I'm not going to, and on goes, you fill in the rest. You see? But until we die to ourselves and really claim it's not about me, it's about Christ. It's what he's called me to do, called to the Great Commission. And if our mission is going to be about number 2, the Great Commission, it will force us to grapple with the difficulties of the task. The mission simply cannot be to keep Christians happy and growing, nor can it be about attempting to lure believers from other churches by having glitzier services and better programs. Our mission will actually have to target the nuns. You see, most of our church growth, most churches, let's put it this way, the few churches in the Kentucky Annual Conference that have grown. And I went to a meeting of the NCCD team in 2006, Gene, that 92% of all the Methodist churches in the Kentucky Annual Conference were either flatlined, plateaued, or declining. Only 8% were growing. I don't know if that's changed or not, probably not much. That was in 2006. But the ones that are, unfortunately, too oftentimes, are growing by transfer growth, shifting sheep, right? We heard that this morning. Or biological growth. How will you grow a church? Well, let's just get young people have babies we can grow up biologically. Or the prodigal growth, what he calls. And that's where people, now, I think that's more valid than they want to give credit for, but that's where people have left the church. They've grown up in the church, like the prodigal son, and then they left and went off and did their own thing and whatever, and then they've come back home. They've come back and found the church. Oftentimes, though, we find that when they leave the Methodist church, a lot of times they don't come back to the Methodist church. They end up at Southeast Christian or Southland Christian or Quest or some of these other places. A lot of those churches are just full of ex-Methodist people, quite frankly. It's just the truth. Okay. So you want to reach the world for Christ, it says, and why are not most of us doing it? Jesus gives us the answer in Matthew 9:12-13. Jesus, overhearing, shot back, "Who needs a doctor, the healthy or the sick? Go figure out what this scripture means. I'm after mercy, not religion. I'm here to invite outsiders, not coddle insiders." That's what Terry Tickle's talking about in his book, Presence-Based Church, when he talks about Pastor Fetch. In the Martha Church, it's a consumer-based church, that the pastor is here, I'm here for you all. If you're my church members and you're my members, then I'm here to serve you and meet your needs. I'm Pastor Fetch. So if you need something, you got a hangnail or a toenail, or you need a weed in the garden removed, call Pastor Fetch, he'll come do it. That's being a little facetious. But that's a consumer-based mentality. You see, I've practiced I've tried to be the other pastor, where the one sheep is lost, leaves the 99 in the pen, safe and secure. Doesn't forget about them, but he or she spends their energy going out and finding the lost sheep. And when they find the lost sheep, there's a huge celebration. I found the lost sheep. Meanwhile, the older brother, see, so many churches have suffered from the stronghold of the elder brother syndrome. I was here all along. Hey, pastor, don't forget who built this church. Not them people you were out trying to reach. I put my hard money in here. You know how long I've been a member of this church? You know how much money I've given to this church? Well, when I tell people, and I look at them, and I heard that a time or two, I said, yeah, I do. You want me to tell you? Because I do. That shocks the pants off of people. I've never revealed that. But the truth of the matter is, most people want to tell you that they're doing a lot for the church. They're not. So don't go tell your pastor all you've done for the church, because he or she may know. That's a whole other issue. Gene, help me out there. This has been recorded, so I didn't say that. But the facts are, in a Martha-based church that's consumer-driven, you got to make sure the customers come back the next week. And so that's why we're not advancing the kingdom. That's why we're struggling. That's why our attendance is going. Because you know what I've learned? One thing I've learned, I can do everything in the world to try to make someone happy. And then they can just walk right out that door and go down the church down the road. Just like that. I've done everything I could. So let's try to really think about who our contexts are. Let's think about these people called the nuns. Let's think about the unchurched. And let's think about what we can do. So can we change, all right? Now, if you build it, they won't come. It's amazing the degree to which outreach strategies rest on a single, deeply flawed premise that people want what we have to offer. More often than not, they don't. They don't. Rethinking evangelism. Now we're going to start getting to the meat of this to answer our brother's question back there. What do we do? Rethinking evangelism. If you think of a timeline of 1 to 10, from the whole period of the 50s up through even the end of the 90s, this was the Acts 2 context. There were, on a scale of 1 to 10, most people in America were on about an 8. Well, they had some basic Christian beliefs, some basic thing. It used to be when we send our kids off, or when I was a kid, I'd go to Boy Scouts when I was a kid, or Cub Scouts. The things that they were teaching me then were oftentimes reflective of the things that were being taught in the pulpits or in Sunday school classes. When I played sports, when I did other things, there was kind of this more congruity of things that were being taught. no longer, right? No, that's just not really there. So now, in the 2000s and beyond, the nuns, for example, would be on that same scale along about a 3. So that shows the Acts 17 context. So if we're still thinking that people know what we're talking about when we talk about getting saved, or we talk about coming to know Christ, or we tell Bible stories or Bible verses, there's a far less number of people, far less percentage of people that have any clue of what we're talking about than even back 20, 25, 30 years ago. Does that make sense to you? So if you think of evangelism as a process and an event, we talk about the nuns and other unchurched groups that are so different from us than from 25 years ago. Here are 6 typical, when I talk about it, you got to plant seeds and water. It's kind of like an incubator now. It takes time to germinate, time to develop. So 6 typical church environments towards this group called the nuns. Non-hostile. You were talking about this earlier, my friend. Openly antagonistic towards nuns who may happen to venture in. You know, all the rubbernecking that just goes on, you know, and just the way people, where they may look, where they may act, you know. Becky told you at lunch we had 25, 30 kids coming from a housing project primarily, and you ought to see what some of our people, they don't even know they're doing it. But some of these kids are unruly. Some of them look disheveled, and they are. Some of them are black, and we're lily white. And some of them are biracial, and we're lily white. And some of them are Asian, and we are lily white. You know how many, would you just even dare to guess how many good, solid American, apple pie and Chevrolet good American and white people have never even touched a black person? Never even touched a black person. There's a bunch, you all. And so these kids come in here, and, they've not been, their parents aren't here. Some may start coming. Some have come a time or two, but they're not here. We're trying to get our own parents, people like me and my age, and adopt one of these kids, sit with, because they don't know how to behave. They've not been taught. They've been in school all day long. Well, I've had a couple teachers that have retired from. They primarily go to one of the elementary schools here behind the church, down the road here. And so they said, one of the teachers said, well, they know how to act in school. I said, you have them 190 days a year for 6 or 7 hours a day. We have them 1 hour a week. So it is what it is. And if we don't like the way it's going to be, then people are just going to say, it's not for me. It upsets I can't eat. You ain't missed many meals. Look at you. I can't eat. It upsets my dinner on Wednesday night, or bothers me, or it just makes me uncomfortable. All that kind of stuff. So, non-hostile. Non-indifferent. They're apathetic toward the nuns. Unwilling to answer their questions. Number 3, non-hopeful. Want to reach nuns, but unwilling to change their environment. I don't know what your bulletin looks like in church, but I don't know what your bulletin is like, but I'm going to guess. I know what your all's bulletin is like. I've seen one. It takes a PhD to read their bulletin. A PhD in religion at that. New Testament. Look at some of the bulletins. Look at some of the stuff we have in it. You think people can figure out what we're doing, what they're supposed to be doing, what's going on in there? All these, words, funny words. Gloria Patri. What's that? For crying out loud. What's the doxology? What's that mean to anybody? Doesn't mean anything to anybody who's a nun. But if you go somewhere where the people are very different from you, look different, talk different, think different, how comfortable are you going to be? Go over here to this. There's a little Mexican restaurant right over here, and it's really authentic Mexican, very good. You can go in there at lunch, and every one of us would be a vast minority in there. And what if they were all at a big round table? There's just one table, and there's a whole bunch of the Hispanic people in there. And you're going to go there and eat lunch. And there's a couple empty chairs there. They're like, hey, come on. You can't, they're maybe speaking in Spanish. Maybe a few of them know a little English. They do. How comfortable would you be to go sit down there? There's about 20 people in a big circle, big, huge table. They're all Hispanic, mostly speaking Spanish. Look very different from you, from this crowd. I can tell you that, different than me. And you're going to sit down and be comfortable with them, and the menu is mostly in Spanish. Would you ever go back? No. You wouldn't. And so we have environments, without even being aware that we have such environments, every Sunday morning for people to walk in. Sure, come. Doesn't matter to us that you can't figure out what we're doing. It doesn't matter to us that you're not very comfortable, but it does matter. Nun-sensitive, want to reach nuns and willing to change a bit. Nun-targeted, church members, number 5, place a high priority on the nuns, needs of the nuns, and to make every effort to remove any all barriers that may impede the exploration process. And then number 6, this is kind of where I had a church last church I pastored, and honestly kind of where we are here. I know it's on videotape, people are going to see it. I'm just speaking the truth. I don't know how to do it any other way. Number 6, no man's land. Not being targeted enough to reach the unchurched, but being too targeted to the unchurched for the churched. That's the elder brother syndrome that I was talking about. Oh, Pastor, we want you. Yeah, we want to win people to Jesus. We want to advance the kingdom. Well, in some ways, what people are really saying is, we need more people in this church, so we need more money. Our budget's suffering. God knows that. He doesn't honor that. He'll honor true kingdom endeavors. But if you really start trying to go out and reach the unchurched, you may be finding yourself in no man's land. Because you'll have some of the church people that will be with you all the way. And they'll tell you, don't worry about those who get upset. Don't worry about we're with you, Pastor. Or you as lay people, you can say, don't worry about that. We're here, man. We got this. But then at the other hand, though, you've got other church members, they're feeling neglected, overlooked, forgotten, ignored, and all those kind of things because you've been spending too much time on those people, kind of a deal. So the no man's land is tough. The importance of cause. 50s to the 80s, the direct approach in evangelism was direct proclamation of the gospel. From 90s to the 2000s, it was forming community where someone would belong before they would believe. Now, 2010 forward, cause. Cause is what really grabs a lot of the nuns right now. So if you want to really know what's interesting, what people who have no religious affiliation, they are interested in sex trafficking. They are interested in kids in poverty. And they are interested in people who are hungry. They've realized, it's hard for us to realize, that there are actually people in the United States of America that are hungry. There's millions of people that are hungry in this land of plenty in America. But the nuns are kind of focused in on that. Some of these causes, now they're not interested in the cause of going out and put 10 commandments on every courthouse building in America. That's a long gone cause. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, I'm just saying that's what they're saying, okay? Drug addiction, all these kind of things are what capture the nuns' attention. And so cause in an effective way to get the attention of the nuns. We may have lost the opportunity to talk with them and do life with them, but we haven't lost the opportunity to do good to them, to do good before them, and to do good with them. So if you have family members, if you have community members, if you have daughters, sons, grandkids who are in the nuns, and they've found out what they're interested in, what causes are they interested in? What do they care about? What do they care about? And maybe you can start caring about it with them. Maybe you can get involved with them. Maybe you have a granddaughter that doesn't go to church. Maybe she's 22 or 24 years old, and she doesn't go to church. But she's interested in what's happening over in Thailand and even around the block, maybe, sex trafficking. Girls being held and sold into slavery. Maybe you don't even know what sex trafficking is. Find out what it is. And find out what's going on there. Finding out maybe your daughter or your granddaughter or your kids, or maybe they're involved. Maybe their little league team, maybe their dance team, maybe their soccer club has taken up money to help some food pantry somewhere. Not a church food pantry, but maybe the local, food pantry or something. Maybe there's just things you can investigate and explore to even get involved, so you can do good opportunities with them and even do it before them. 1 John 3:18, dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other, let us show the truth by our actions. So I'll put a little caution there and there about you can be on the wrong side of a cause as far as the nuns are concerned, and that can be more detrimental. So, you can come up with some examples there. The power of cause is that it catches the attention of the nuns and gives the church credibility and integrity to open them up to conversations about Christ and the gospel. So here's another question. What are some causes you can get involved with that not only serve the least and the lost, but will also stop the nuns in their tracks and force them to pay attention? I've talked about missional, use that word. Attractional and missional. Attractional is what most churches have been doing forever. We have this wonderful thing called, every other year we do it, called the Living Lord's Supper. Gene was here 2 years ago, the first time I saw it. We do it around right before Easter, and we have a big stage there, big platform, and it's a reenactment of Da Vinci's Last Supper. It's a really powerful, moving experience. And we do it as an outreach. But in fact, as I learned about it, I've only been here, just been one of them, and most of the people that came, they were invitees, even though we advertised in the paper and put a big banner out in front of the church and all that right here. Most people that came were invitees of people in our church who invited their friends. Most of them go to other churches. It's good. It's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, things that in-reach, that build up the body of Christ. Revivals are in-reaches now, primarily. I'm going to go preach a revival at one of my former churches over at Benson United Methodist Church over in Harrison County in a couple of weeks, and most of the people that are going to be there are going to be the rank and file, the tried and true. That's okay if we understand why we're doing it. It really is an in-reach to stir up and enthuse and charge up the body of Christ. But so missiology then, so that's being attractional. Missional is where we're going out, They do have a sign that's seen it going out the front door, one of the doors at First Methodist in Frankfort, that says, you walk out the door, it says, now you're entering your mission field. Got that little sign right there. I'd get 3 of them, and I'd make people move one out of the way before they could walk out the door. I'd have them, some kind of spring-loaded action. So, like a switch on a tree. You move it out, and it'll swing right back before the next person may smack them right in the chest. Or you stand back and say, I got to get the sign that says I'm entering out in the mission field. So I'd do crazy things like that if I could. So, to employ a missional strategy, 3 critical tasks any missionary would do. Learn the language of the people you're trying to reach. Anybody know a missionary in another country? You ever talking about language training? Yeah. Mike and Sherry Morrissey were here last May. They are in Thailand. What a cool place that would be to do ministry. A God-forsaken place. I mean, I personally don't want to do what I'm doing right now. I'm a missionary in a place that everybody seems like they're, comfortable and secure and all that. I'd like to be planted somewhere that's crazy like that. Where, man, if you don't have God helping you, you may die. I mean, so anyhow, so they had to learn the language. I'm telling you about learning the language, or I'm talking about, challenging about, learning the language of the nuns. Learn the language. Watch their television shows. Go see some of their goofy, crazy movies. Don't be afraid of them. I'm going to get that stuff in my head. And I've read that it'll never leave my head. It'll warp me forever. I don't think so. I'm not telling you, you're not 14-year-olds. I'm saying this to you. You're grown adults, for crying out loud. So learn their language. And then use that language. Become a student of the culture and become enough sensitized to that culture that you can operate effectively within it. Learn their music. Oh, gosh. You got to be kidding. Hate that music. I do too. Learn it. Learn it. Understand it. So you can operate effectively within it. Number 3, translate the gospel so that it can be heard, understood, and appropriated. The presentation of the gospel must be translated. Never transformed, changed, but translated. All right? And so, translating the gospel. I need to move on. We're running out of time here, aren't we? We're getting close. Just a little thing there you can read on your own about translating the gospel. Jesus came full of grace and truth. We don't have a one-armed Jesus. It's grace and truth. So that's what we got to do. We got to speak the truth. We're not watering down the truth. We're not ignoring the truth. We're not changing the truth, but we're doing it in kind of an aroma of grace, if you will. And so we're in a battle of ideas. Learn to think again. It's amazing how many Christian people don't read anything anymore except for nonfiction, entertaining novels. How many of you go to a beach, go on vacation in the summer, and you take I'm not being critical. Well, I kind of am, I guess. Sorry. You take some fluffy novel or some intense mystery, and it's all fiction, it has nothing to do with anything real. But you take a book like Terry Takel's book about divine strongholds, and you think, I don't want to get that. We got to think again, you all. I mean, gosh, the world's outthinking us. The world is outthinking us. We're not challenging ourselves anymore. We're reading the same old stuff all the time. Be prepared for the so what questions. Again, most nuns are not interested in the facts or the evidence of our faith. They want to know what it means. Why did Jesus die? Why did he rise from the dead? And so forth. What difference does it really make? Be prepared for the so what. That's fine. Good. Good point. Good message. So what? So what? And then just being a mere Christian. You see? Not a denominational salesman. Not a hyper-spiritual junkie. Not a tired, worn-out, deflated religious person. Not a lukewarm, half-hearted, afraid to take a stand on anything kind of believer. But rather a true, hopeful, faithful, serving, loving, witnessing, mere Christian. Read the book, Mere Christianity. You're not too old. Read that kind of stuff. Read that kind of stuff. Get young again. Get young again. Get young in your mind. Get young in your soul again. That's what I'm trying to do. It's not easy. Woo. It's not easy. Man, sometimes the music's so loud, my kids are like, oh, it drives me crazy. But that's what they are. Open the front door. Let the church, let everyone know the church is open. Look at this one. The nuns will adventure inside the church, just not on their own. I heard this on Caleb last night. I was driving home late last night from this church, and I heard this. It was shared on Caleb. Anybody know what Caleb is? You don't have to know what Caleb is. You can listen to other stuff. But they say that 82% of all unchurched people can't seem to resist one thing. It cuts through their defenses and penetrates their barriers. What is it? It's as a friend or someone they know invites them to church. They will usually come at least once. But here's what they got to find. 5 keys. Number 1, they got to find friendliness. I was just told not long ago by a member of our church that just a few years ago, they started coming to church and they were told, you are sitting in my seat. We think that stuff ended in the 60s. It didn't. It still happens today. My gosh. How can anybody in the name of Christ say that to somebody else? Oh, when it's all about them, it's easy. When we're the consumers, when they've paid for that pew over and over and over again by the little, 1.2% tithe that they put in the offering plate and think they've done something big. Number 2, children's ministry. Children's ministry. The research shows you can get it wrong in the worship ministry and get it right in children's ministry, and the chances are none will come back. You can get it all right in preaching, all right in worship, all right in music, at least in their opinion. You can get it all wrong in children's ministries, they won't be back. They won't be back. They won't be back. If I had only enough money to hire either a children's minister or a youth minister, I'd hire a children's minister every day. It's not, I love my youth minister. He's up here leading us in worship. Love the guy. Music. It's not about contemporary traditional. It's about missional. What we're doing, does it reach the culture? Our organist in our church was here this morning. I love her. I love her. But the truth of the matter is, there's very few people in the United States driving around in their car listening to organ music. There are very few people listening to WUKY-FM or WEKU-FM. There's some, and you may be one, but you're the vast minority about that. And I'm not putting down anything. There is no such thing as contemporary music. It's all traditional, because every bit of it was new sometime or another, right? Every bit of it. So the building, first impressions matter, and physical surroundings convey strong messages. Ask yourself, get people in church, are we expecting company today? Ask yourself that every week. Are we expecting company today? And then the importance of the visual. We live in a visually based world, and the church needs to embrace it. Talking to Sean about this. This screen came about, a few years before I got here, and 2 or 3 years. And there was a lady, even after I've been here, 2.5 years, a lady in the church. I don't think she does it anymore. But she would. My wife sat in front of her. She had to move. My wife wouldn't sit in front of her anymore, because all she would do would be criticize the screen. She would take her big bulletin and do this, and she would do it demonstratively, so everybody in the church sitting around her could see it. There's people in our church that have actually moved away from her over the years because she does that. And she has a doctorate, and she teaches, and she uses projection every time she teaches. She'd be a dinosaur. She'd be a fossil in her professional and academic life if she just did what I'm supposed to do, stand up here and just talk with nothing, like I'm doing to y'all today. It's all right. Okay. Now, let's go to the next page. God, okay. How do we get the attention of those who are paying no attention to us? Servant evangelism is irresistible. George Hunter says, calculates it takes between 12 and 20 significant gospel touches for people to move from the beginning stages to a genuine relationship with Christ. Planting, watering, tending, and harvesting are the key. Show and then tell. 4 basic skills: active kindness, active friendship, active wondering, and active sharing. I'm going to give you some more material. I'm going to hand out some things. If you all will, pass this around. Take these and pass these around for me. I got plenty of them. Anybody, if you don't know anything at all about golf, this may mean nothing to you. Hopefully you know a little bit about it. What we're saying now is that if you look to the difference to the one on the right, it shows you about these 4 stages, these active kindness, and then active sharing, active kindness, active friendship, active wondering, and active sharing. You see, the belief is, as I've been telling you, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where people in America had some kind of basic religious beliefs, they were kind of like on the green. And all we needed then was to show them how to use the putter to knock it in the hole and get saved. Now we're finding that people are all the way back at the tee box. And the green's all the way down there. And you can't use a putter very effectively off the tee box, right? You have different clubs. You have long irons, woods. Then you have long irons. Then you have short irons. Then you have your putter. The point of that is learning different strategies and being aware of where people are. That people are farther away from God than we've ever known them to be in America, at least. Okay? And so, active kindness. I'm gonna pass out something else to you. It came out of the back of the book, Conspiracy of Kindness. Service, evangelism projects that work. And what you need to do, you do them consistently. If you're a church, like I've been in church, led a church where we do one big, huge outreach event a year. It's easy to forget that stuff. You're not impacting culture when you do that. But if you'll get out and do something once a month on a regular plan, and we're going to start a new ministry here at the end of this year, to call it the SOK ministry, S-O-K, Seeds of Kindness. And we're going to start doing, it's going to be on one of the Saturdays, we haven't decided yet, one Saturday each month, we're going to get out and we're going to take lists like this and we're going to do crazy and radical things. And we're going to do them over and over and over again. It won't be the same people doing them because we're going to try to do 12 a year minimum, once a month. And then we'll add some bigger events on top of that. But we're going to try to attract people and try to get their attention. How do you get the attention of people who are paying us no attention? You do crazy, kind things for them, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you keep doing it. You look on that list, there's all kinds of things there. All kinds of things there. You build relationships. So you can't, we don't need to evangelize the saved, do we? You know, if you're in a bridge club or you're in a bunco group or you got a fishing group or whatever, you know, if you're not going with your own church members, you're probably going with your friends who are in other churches, right? So building relationships with people who are the nuns or people who are unchurched that are far from God is the key. And one of the ways to do that is to do these kinds of servant evangelism kindness projects. They work if you'll stay with it and keep doing it and keep doing it. If you're a small rural church, you can become known in that rural community as this little church that does crazy, radically kind things over and over and over again. You don't need to have a wild game dinner once a year. Do something once a month. Do it once a month or do something different. Do things and keep at it. It makes a difference. There will be the temptation. You won't get anything, you know, it's like the Japanese bamboo tree. Isn't that the tree that you planted and you see nothing for like 7 years? Then the 7th year, the sucker grows, a bonsai tree. What do I call it? Bamboo? Same B word, but bonsai tree. And then like in the 6th or 7th year or whatever, that thing grows like crazy. You see, so don't get discouraged when you're going to stay out and do these things. If this gets in your heart and God leads you to do some of these things, you do it. You get a few people that will pray with you for it and about it, and it'll happen because these are the things that capture the attention of the unchurched. They're not interested in our doctrines. They're not interested in how accurate or how true we are or whatever. They're interested in real life stuff. And if you do real life things with them, it makes a difference. A whole list of possibilities. I'm going to read you a story in just a minute, but the last page talks about the hope. The power to transform the human heart lies within the church. Lies within the gospel. All the things we see on television, all the infomercials, all the stuff the world offers, all the products change a person from the outside in. This changes a person from the inside out. You know that. It's just good to be reminded of that. And I love Bill Hybels' quote. There's nothing like the local church when it's working right. Its beauty is indescribable. Its power is breathtaking. Its potential is unlimited. It comforts the grieving and heals the broken in the context of community. It builds bridges to seekers and offers truth to the confused. It provides resources to those in need and opens its arms to the forgotten, the downtrodden, the disillusioned. It breaks the chains of addictions, frees the oppressed, and offers belonging to the marginalized of this world. Whatever the capacity for human suffering, the church has a greater capacity for healing and wholeness. Do you believe that? You do, or you wouldn't give up a whole Saturday. You see, that's why Lace is good, and that's why this works, because you guys are here, and you've got churches, local churches that you live in, that you're a part of, making a difference in. And I bet there's a few others you can get on board with you about some of these kind of things as well, that are really ready to do something, make a difference. You just don't know what to do, don't know how. But these kinds of things, you get some of these books, you start reading some of those things, and it will spark you and it will inspire you. Let me give you one more little handout. This came actually from some of the Lace stuff that they gave us. It's a little survey about your church's hospitality to visitors. And that's something that you can take with you and that can help you some, maybe. Sorry, did I drop those? I'm sorry. I apologize. That's hospitable. Yeah, just throw it at them next time. Yeah. You want a bulletin? Here, I'm going to make it like an airplane. I'm going to throw it to you, okay? Or like a big wad. I water it up and throw you the bulletin. There you go. Welcome. Good to have you. Yeah. You'll be shocked at some of the things in that list. The Vineyard Church in Cincinnati is a really big church, but it wasn't always that way. It's grown a lot in the last 25 years. But they are known, and Steve Sjogren was the founding pastor of that church, and he pastored it, and they became known as this church in the community of Cincinnati of doing all these kinds of things, making a difference. And God is in that and honored that, and so they brought a lot of people in. He said one of his favorite kindness outreach projects at Vineyard Community Church was giving away free book. You got to listen to this. You got to really listen to this. Free books of matches to people in bars, restaurants, and gas stations. Each book has the church's logo on the front, a map to the church, service times, and the church's phone number. Over the past several years, the church has given away tens of thousands of matchbooks to smokers in the Cincinnati area. Steve Sjogren tells of going into a bar to hand out these free matches, and these are in his words. As we walked in, the bartender took a look at us and snarled, "Whatever it is you have, we don't want any." "Okay," I said, "I just thought you might want to have some Christian matches. They're absolutely free." "What? Christian matches?" "Yeah, matches for your customers who smoke." "But I thought that church people hated people who smoke." No, you got it all wrong. We love people who smoke." "You're messing with me." "No kidding. We went out and printed thousands of packets of matches just for customers like yours to show you God's love in a practical way." "Well, in that case, we'll take a bunch of those matches then." By that time in the conversation, the entire clientele of the bar had gathered around. They'd never seen anything like this before. Had gathered around and was leaning toward us to hear more clearly. After all, it wasn't every day that someone came into the bar to offer Christian matches. He concludes, "We hope that every time a person strikes one of those matches, he or she will realize, hey, these guys aren't against people like me. They'll love me whether I smoke or not. Maybe there's a place for me at a church like that." I guarantee you go tell the congregation tomorrow morning that your district superintendent, Gene Hoxer, said, go get some Christian matches and start taking them around to the bars. No. She's good with this, I know. I've heard her talk about things like this. But here's the reality, though. You start down and do something like this, and it's going to light a match in your own church, isn't it? That's just one teeny tiny little thing. They got groups, they got teams in their church that go Saturday nights. Now, this is Cincinnati, understand the context, and they'll go into the restaurants around Cincinnati. A team of 3 will go in there, and they'll have all the things necessary that they'll tote in there to clean the bathrooms in that restaurant. And they'll go up and they'll say, listen, we just want to show you the love of God in a practical way. We want to clean your bathrooms. We're not going to proselytize anybody. We're not going to preach to anybody. We're not going to witness anybody. We just know this place is hopping. It's busy. Look at this place right now. I bet your bathrooms need attending to. What manager is going to say, no, our bathrooms are spick and span. And we just want to clean them. We'll be in and out in 10 minutes. You won't even know that we're here. What's the witness in that? You're not sharing Jesus. They told one story. This church had, most of these restaurants will have, they'll have meetings. They'll bring all the servers together and they'll have meetings, and they may say, by the way, y'all saw these crazy church people came in here cleaning our bathrooms. You never know. Somebody may be looking for a crazy church place like that, I'm just saying, these are the kind of things that arrest the attention, get the attention of people who are paying us no attention. You got to do something. Then you build relationships with them, and you keep at it, and you keep at it. And you learn the language, you learn the culture, and you think, there's a whole world out there that I know nothing about, but God loves, and God's called us to know how to reach them, show them the love of Christ, because the kindness of God will open their heart to salvation. Any questions about that? Probably lots of questions. I'm sorry I've gone so fast. I've tried to speak 100 miles an hour. I'm trying to cover about 4 books in an hour and 10 or 15 minutes. I appreciate you all being here. God help us, Lord. help us to build relationships. We thank you, God, for our salvation. Lord, where would I be? Where would any of us be without you? Lord, we're so blessed, and we've earned nothing about it. That's why it's called grace. And Lord, we know that there's plenty of other people that are looking for what we've already discovered, and that's your love, that's your grace and mercy in Christ. So Lord, stir within us a desire. Help us to be risk takers, to get out of the boat and to do these kinds of things that will help people to see how much you love them. Thank you for each person that's here, God. Thank you for Lace here in our Frankfort district, Jesus. And we honor you and we bless you in your name. Amen.